Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Hello. Now I hear you have some news in regards to one of my favourite studios, NetherRealm, and other Warner Brothers associated things.
I certainly do, Scott, but I'm not confident it's going to be good news. I'm not confident that you're going to enjoy what I have to say, because it turns out, according to a report by CNBC, who has cited an insider source working at AT&T, apparently the company which owns Warner Media as a whole, I think they bought the company out in 2018, is apparently looking to sell its gaming division. So Warner Brothers Games as a publisher and all of their the studios they own are apparently up for sale, and it's eyeing some buyers, including Take-Two Interactive, EA, and Activision. So let me break this down, because this isn't as simple as whoever the company gets sold to, they won't simply own all the IPs, but they will own the developers. So developers like NetherRealm, developers like Rocksteady, Avalanche, WB Montreal, they would all be owned by whoever buys the company. But IPs like Batman, Mortal Kombat, Harry Potter, Lego, stuff like that, they won't be owned by the new company. But according to a quote in this report, a deal might involve a commercial licensing agreement where AT&T can continue to get revenue from its IP. So essentially, they won't own the IPs like Batman, Mortal Kombat, Harry Potter, but presumably whoever buys the company will be making those games through the licensing agreement from the studio. So essentially, Scott, all the games that you love from WB might, in the darkest timeline, end up over at EA.
Oh, for the love of... there's a lot of things to this. Firstly, it reminds me of, and we don't even know if this is true, but it reminds me of the proposed rumor for Konami, where Konami apparently did some deal with Sony to allow Sony to do the Silent Hill reboot or whatever the hell's happening with Silent Hill, and Konami just sort of sit over here and get paid. And I like the potential setup for that in Konami's case, because it doesn't seem like they have any sort of creative bones left in their body, and I would rather they just give that IP to someone else and just sit back and accept the checks. But in this case, how much is, that initial sort of slate of publishers that you read out at the beginning, they vary so much into how hands-on they are with devs. I think Take-Two would be pretty hands-off, considering how much they let Rockstar do. But even then, Strauss Zelnick for Take-Two said in regards to Grand Theft Auto that, they want to start releasing more and more. They didn't expect GTA Online to be so big. And it's like, if you were then given a slate of new IP, I could just see a boardroom of suits sort of sitting down and going, well, we should probably crank these out more than ever. Batman hasn't been around since 2015, and do something like that. But yeah, like you said, the darkest timeline is the EA one. Although, hopefully,
Activision,
with stuff like Jedi... I don't know, I think Activision's worse than EA at this point.
Yeah, in terms of games, I think. I mean, they're all bad. I think that's what I want to kind of say here. It's not that WB is a great publisher, because in many ways they're really not. The way they
killed Shadow of War.
Exactly, they killed Shadow of War, the way they've treated microtransactions, and the way they completely messed up, the PC version of Arkham Knight and prioritized DLC and stuff like that. They don't have a great track record, but at the very least, I think the games underneath them have been good, whereas you can see brands or developers like this going to Activision or EA, which has a history, both of them, of acquiring great studios and creative studios, and then just grinding them to a pulp and eventually shutting them down. We saw that with Visceral Games, we've seen that with a bunch under Activision, or if they're not closed down, they're kind of demoted to the point where they're just support studios for Call of Duty and the franchises that actually sell. So that's kind of the big worry. A lot of this is kind of the lesser of four evils, I suppose, but they do vary in quality quite wildly, I'd say.
Especially, like you said, that whole thing. I mean, someone like Raven Software, I think Beanox as well. There's been a bunch of studios, like you said, that have been snapped up by Activision only to become DLC add-on studios for Call of Duty, which is, I don't know, considering Raven's output in particular, that it's still a slap in the face every time I read about that. But someone like, NetherRealm, NetherRealm were resurrected by Warner Brothers, for Mortal Kombat, for example, that was teetering off towards the end of the 2000s, in terms of the return, the amount of money that each one was making. And if you look creatively at that series, series towards the end of the 2000s, it kind of needed an injection of something, hence the 2011 soft reboot. I think it was 2011, but Mortal Kombat 9. And that's only gone strength to strength since. But like, if there's a major shakeup at the top, then how much do those money grubby practices then filter back down? But I mean, to go silver lining, to go positive side, do you think that this would speed along the release of a Batman game eventually?
Maybe eventually. I don't know
whether a multiplayer platform one.
I don't know, man, because there's a lot going on at AT&T now. Apparently, according to this report, they're about to get a new CEO. I think they just swapped to a new one. I think it was May last year, and now they're getting a new one come July 1st. Who actually previously worked at Warner Brothers, like as a Warner Media. So that might be promising, but that might just speed up kind of like this deal. We don't know what stage this is in currently, but if there are already buyers interested, according to the source, you could imagine that they're wanting to get this deal done as quickly as possible. Because apparently, I didn't know this, but AT&T is apparently $165 billion in debt, and they're wanting to offset this. So the price they're looking for their gaming division is $4 billion, which is, I think, wasn't that what Star Wars sold for? So it's a hefty chunk of change, and you're getting a lot, like we said, a lot of talented studios, and you are presumably getting the opportunity to jump on these iconic licenses and licenses that sell. So it's a lot of money, but these publishers have a lot of money to spend.
Yeah, that side of it, where it's just sort of massive companies playing with negative amounts, like just that whole idea of just trying to sort of salvage something creative and something good and something artistically focused in the middle of all that. Maybe that's doable, but I mean, I don't know, like you said, like someone like Warner Brothers, for example, I mentioned Shadow of War because when all those conversations came out about the reality of putting like orc loot boxes into that game and how that was very money focused, and that just reeked of that sort of cold, hard business mindset of like, well, we should inject, the microtransaction system into this. Personally, I think that microtransaction, the perception of them has shifted quite a lot, like since Battlefront 2 blew up. I think a lot of devs, a lot of publishers have had to be more cautious with them. So you would hope that even if it does go to someone like Activision or EA, that they couldn't quote unquote get away with this again. They wouldn't be able to just throw a Batman game out that is some weird, loot-based Batman game. I think a lot of those like loot mechanics and things like that, they feel so dated now because of how terrible 2017 was. But at the same time, maybe it would, I don't know, I want there to be a positive. I don't want someone like NetherRealm, who are on the form of their careers, to suddenly just sort of, fall to the wayside within just something like Injustice 3 or Mortal Kombat 12 or whatever. Like, there's so much promise in both those IPs, and I would hate someone like EA or Activision to just throw horrible monetization practices into them and just ruin everything.
That's kind of the worry, because like I said before, like WB isn't great at the moment, and like in Shadow of War, and even in kind of, I think Mortal Kombat 11 was bad for it at the very start, where they kind of pushed them to see how much they could get away with.
That was more NetherRealm than Warner Brothers, apparently, when it all sort of shook out. It was more to do with how they balanced the challenge towers, because I covered that in my review, just being like, what the hell, this thing is nigh on impossible unless you pay your way through it. And NetherRealm got out there and apologized and tweaked everything. MK11 now is like the best Mortal Kombat ever. But yes.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, all of the games from these developers, you talk about Mortal Kombat and the streak that NetherRealm's been on between Mortal Kombat and Injustice. You talk about the Batman games that have come out recently. You talk about the Batman games that are in development. You talk about even like stuff like Mad Max by Avalanche, which I know we love. You know what I mean? Like, all of these great games have been made at this publisher that isn't great. And the worry for me is, like, all of these publishers aren't awesome, but if you transfer those teams over to, an EA or an Activision, where not only is the business side quite bad, the monetization of these games, that's already bad, but then the way they treat kind of, different genres and different ideas and single player games or multiplayer games, like, that's also markedly different. Even though EA, like you said, have made steps recently with the likes of Jedi Fallen Order and stuff like that, showing that single player games can be viable. I think the precedent is still there, and it has been for about 2 decades of them just gobbling up studios, initially doing all right games like Dead Space or Mass Effect, but then all of those eventually, at some point, there always comes a point where it kind of goes downhill. So, like you said, I do want to look at the silver linings of this, and it still might not go ahead, but if it does, like I'm always going to have that pit in my stomach of when's it going to change? When's the formula going to be altered? And that's assuming they get the licenses, you know what I mean?
Well, I know that's the thing. We've had such a terrible generation in regards to consumer trust. Like, it's that whole thing. It's like, do you trust X game publisher to allow the creative vision of this developer to, you know, make it to shelves as it is intended, or are they going to throw in all sorts of different demands and changes to what was supposed to go ahead on the creative side? And I think this generation, more than any other previously, has been disastrous in that regard, where we expect games to be broken, we expect things to take advantage of us. We're actually like amazed when something is a full game at launch, like when something like God of War comes along, it's like, oh my god, you pay the money and it's all there, like that, you know, it's a one-off.
It's funny when purchases like this happen, you always say, you know, well, they've already got Rocksteady's, you know, superhero games. They're already great. Mortal Kombat's already great. Gate, I said there. It's not gate, it's great.
It is Bill Gates.
It is Bill Gates. Why would you change them? Why would you mess up the formula when it's so good? And the reality is, you know, that always happens. It doesn't matter whether a formula is good. Each company, when they buy something, they think they can do it better. We saw it when Disney bought Fox, you know what I mean? A lot of people were kind of saying, it won't be that bad. They're still going to make, you know, do the same. Fox has a great kind of system in place for its movies, for Fox Searchlight. They're not going to mess with that too much. And obviously they did mess with it enough to make it, you know, at least a little bit unrecognizable. So I feel like you're always going to see the fingerprints of whoever buys these companies, no matter how much of a no-brainer it might be to keep things the same. We saw it when EA bought the Star Wars license. We were all saying, just do Knights of the Old Republic 3, just make Battlefront good again, and then they kind of messed both of those up a little bit. When it could have been an open goal, money on the table.
I mean, if we ever do the easiest open goals in gaming history, like that is one of them, where it's just put Star Wars stuff out. I mean, yeah, that's a whole separate thing on how much they sort of languished and didn't, like, you know, maximize the IP. But hopefully they wouldn't then apply that to everything from Batman to Mortal Kombat to whatever. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below of the potential changing of the guard in regards to the publishers that are in charge of these major IPs. And is there any potential positives? At least we might actually get a Batman game before, you know, 2030. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.